back to the Soft Red Podcast. This week, I brought in one of my great friends, friend for 17 seasons over at Corona del Sol, a near dear friend of mine, like I said. Brent Havens joins us today. Brent, we're going to be bringing on Trent Elliot, the head coach over from Desert Vista today. He brings in 2 state championships to the show, a 9-2-4 record. You and I had a chance last week to go watch Desert Vista on senior night versus Pinnacle. Right off the bat, what were your thoughts of the match?
I think it's a typical Desert Vista team. They compete at a high level, very very organized. They like to attack. You give them space, they're going to take it to you. They look great against Pinnacle. And then I actually got to see them again against Corona. And it was a good contest. Corona put up, I think, a little bit better fight than Pinnacle did. But every year he brings a top-notch program with that. You're going to get a good competition out of him.
Yeah, I agree. The one thing that you and I really enjoyed while we were watching them is it's that spirit that those Desert Vista players play with. It seems like almost every game, and the freedom in which they play. I know when we bring him on in a few minutes here, I want to ask him about that. Like, what gives you the license, or what gives them the license to just play without that reserve of like, oh no, if I make a mistake. The second thing that you and I noticed that I thought was so fun to watch is how intensely and organized they go forward on an attack. I mean, and they've always done that. Even back to the Mike Rabaska days, when he would scream, "Hey, frame the goal, frame the goal."
Mhm.
An old Rabaska saying. And so I think going forward for them, if it's Desert Vista, if it's San Luis, Sunnyside, Pinnacle, we'll run down here the top 10 in just a second. If Desert Vista plays a solid Desert Vista style, they're going to be a tough out for sure, no doubt. And again, let's really quick here. We'll run down the top 10 here in the open and get your thoughts on some of these teams here. Okay, so if we sat and we talked here about the top 10, which is in the top 10 open, we've got Desert Vista number 1, Pinnacle number 2, San Luis 3. Campo Verde beats AZ College Prep and Jeff Perry last night 1-0. And again, Jeff Perry saying he's lost one of his top scorer for this. I don't know if he said it was for the season, but again, he's dealing with some illness right now that's really taking a toll on the team. Sunrise Mountain coming in at 6. Sunnyside drops from number 1 all the way down to number 7. Washington, Phoenix Union School at number 8. Hamilton is in the new top 10 at number 9. And then Sal Point staying steady at number 10. Hey, Coach Havens, you've seen a handful of these teams play. Who do you like in the top 10 to make a run towards the state championship in the Open?
Well, I mean, you got to give, credit to any of them.
They're all
High school
strong.
soccer, you and I both know, it's whoever gets hot at the end of the season. You know,
100%.
you've got your games in, beginning of December and even the beginning of January, but whoever gets hot at the end of January, the beginning of February, those are the teams you got to watch out for. I mean, if you're looking at it, Sunnyside losing their first game, is that going to affect them? Probably not. They're always tough. They have a tough kids. They're a team to watch. You've got your San Luis, who's been, in the state championship the last 2 years. They graduate a lot of seniors, but they're, going to put in another run after a big win at home against Sunnyside. You've got to respect them. Pinnacle, lost big to Desert Vista. Can they rebound? Desert Vista came away with a tie the other night against Corona. You know, uh, it's anyone's game right now. Hamilton's got a big game coming up on Friday. They're playing Castile, who is, in the top 20.
Correct. And Castile is at number 10 in the 6A. Castile had been number 10 in the Open. And again, they had that unfortunate what's it forfeit come up when they had played Pinnacle. So that dropped them a little bit. But again, based on what Justin had said, I'd seen Castile play for one half, quality team. And you're absolutely right. If they sneak up into that little space and they can beat Hamilton tomorrow night,
They
momentum.
might they might jump into the top 10. Who knows? You
And
know,
the top 10,
everyone wonders this time of year. I mean, you look at the differences. Campo Verde jumps to number 4 after a win against ACP, and ACP drops all the way down from 2 to 5. That's big. And then you got the dark horses like Sunrise Mountain. No one's expecting them or knows anything very much about them, but they're 10-1, looking to go in a 5A school. Sal Point, Wolfgang is probably the greatest coach in Arizona history. I mean, no, I don't know if anyone can deny that. You've got to have him.
right?
TJ Hagan at Mesa, top 12 team. How's he not going to have his kids ready? They're
Always does.
always making a run deep in the playoff.
Always.
So, I
Always.
mean, take your pick. Any of these teams on a given night can beat each other. Like you and I both know, whoever's hot at that time is going to give each other a fit. The other thing this year, too, Sal, is home games through the semifinals. That's huge.
Through. So
So
you don't have to go to Campo Verde and win the semifinal. You don't have to go to wherever. Your semifinal is at your home site. Massive. Massive.
that's probably like the biggest thing. You can talk about 4A playing 5A and 5A playing 6A in this open final. The big thing right now is home field advantage through the semifinals. That's huge.
Yes.
If there's going to be anything to talk about, I think that's one of the big stories to talk about right now.
Yes.
But right now, before the open is finalized and everything, I'm definitely looking forward to that Hamilton Castile matchup tomorrow night.
Yes.
And it should be a good playoff. I'm excited for an open playoff, and I'm even excited for the 6A, 5A, and 4A after they reorganize and see who gets on a run then, because those teams are taking a week off
Yes.
as we get this open finalized. And sometimes that can hurt a team too. So those will be interesting games, and it could give opportunities, for some of these other programs who are not in the open to make a run and build.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. The home games through the semifinals are going to be huge for those 5A, the Sunrise Mountains. Even again, think of this. If Sunnyside, San Luis have home games, that means an East Valley school, a Phoenix Union school, a Sunrise Mountain, you're going all the way to Yuma or Tucson to play a game. That's tough for high school kids. And
It's
so
it's not easy. You
no,
and I both remember 2010 when we won the state championship. We took a 3-hour bus ride down to Yuma, to play a tough Kofa school.
yes.
And it's definitely a home field advantage down there that you definitely cherish.
Yeah, Jamie Neiswanger made sure to bring the band out to that game, if you remember, right?
Yep.
The band goes and Trevor Allen hits the third goal and just goes over to the band. Kill it. Anyway, Coach, we're going to be bringing on head coach from Desert Vista, Trent Elliot. He brings in 2 state championships in 8 seasons. What a run that guy is having. We're going to ask him about what's the secret over at Desert Vista. There was a couple of rough seasons, before he took over after Mike Rabaska. And Trent comes in after a 2017-2018 season, wins a state championship in his first run, has won one after that. And this year seems to be another quality run. We had a chance to watch them against Pinnacle, and it was impressive, to say the least. And again, he's got some quality senior leadership. He's got a set of returning players making a big impact. And again, both you and I know it takes a handful of years to develop, to get those kids, those younger athletes into the system. And it seems like what he does at Desert Vista, from a time a kid comes in as a freshman to the time they get up to seniors, is working. And then you add a couple of move-ins, or kids that are playing MLS next, or maybe they're just doing club soccer, and then they say, "Hey, listen, I've decided to go high school," which again is why you and I are here. We love the high school teams. We love the high school season. There's something special about it. And again, I don't care how many club soccer games and tournaments you play in. There is nothing like competing at the high school level on a Friday night versus your rivals, a state quarterfinal, semifinal, and then your school shows up, to play at a state championship. So, Coach Havens, again, we'll bring Trent Elliot on. Coach Elliot, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, well, the reason, again, we brought you on is I wanted to stay consistent. So far, I've had Justin Hughes from Pinnacle, Casey O'Brien from Sunnyside, and the new number 1 ranked Desert Vista Thunder. So congratulations on that. So far this week, again, you've gone from number 3 last week up into number 1 this week. Mm-hmm. And when we saw you, Brent Havens and I, Coach Havens, we were at the Pinnacle match. And boy, again, it was powerful. Like I said, it was so much effort, and it was such a Desert Vista performance. And so far this year, you've had big wins against Pinnacle, San Luis, and Perry. Mm-hmm. Talk about the season so far, and what, again, right off the bat, what makes this team special to make a run towards the state championship? You're third.
Yeah. Again, thanks for having me. This, as you know, you as a longtime coach, every season's different, and I think coming into a season as a coach, you have an idea in your head as far as the talent coming back and where that might settle and where that might put you. And I think this team has kind of taken it on themselves to not be complacent. I think last year we may have had a little better talent last year, but didn't produce and didn't end up where we wanted to be. This year coming back, I knew I had a solid back line. I was returning 3 out of the 4 from the year before, and had another who was a junior last year, senior, step up this year. So I knew I was going to have a solid back line. Returning goalie who was a sophomore last year is a junior this year. So I knew defending wasn't going to be our struggle. And so the games that we've had success, especially against, like you said, Pinnacle and San Luis, is when we're able to find the back of the net. I think that's where we're finally able to put all the pieces together and be the team that I think we're capable of being. So great senior leadership. I've got 12 seniors on this team, but I've also got, I've got a sophomore that starts and plays all 80 minutes. So, I mean, just a combination of everything, but that leadership seniors taking the initiative to not be complacent and wanting to do better than we ended up last year is really what's put us forward this year.
And so again, you said you had 3 or 4 of your back line come back. And again, Coach Havens and I, we recognize a handful of players. You had Hayden Quest, Caleb Ackerson, and Genki Shinohara.
Yep.
Those kids are special just right off the bat. Those were the first 3. Those are your captains.
Yep.
Who are some of the other? You said this. There's a sophomore. Who's the goalie? Give them some publicity here that we can share.
Absolutely. So Kagan Terrell's our goalie. His sophomore year stepped up and was big for us last year, kind of as a starter. His freshman year got thrown into a game against Brophy because I had a goalie get red carded, and Kagan was just still on the bench and threw him in and played well then. So he's been in the game for a while. He's a great keeper and a great leader. I'm looking forward to him to be an even bigger leader and taking that bigger role next year as well. Those 3 that you named, Will Amata, who's been around Arizona soccer for forever, he's my center back right now, and he's really, Will was somebody that brought up for the Max is the big guy. Max Morrison is the big guy. Will is the other one next to him, but brought Will up his sophomore year for the tournament. And I think, as a player, you kind of get that, okay, next year is going to be my year. And then junior year, we had two seniors that started in front of him. So his junior year, it didn't play much. So this year, just him taking that lead in the back line and just making it his goal, like, hey, I want us to be successful and taking that leadership role. So those are some names. And then Ian, I'm going to butcher his name. Ian Habue is our sophomore.
Right, we'll edit it out.
Yeah. He starts in the center mid for us, and to have a sophomore that just has his composure and just his ability to play controlled, in a game that can rush you. He can just play controlled and distribute the ball. Next to Caleb has really been, kind of keys to our success this year.
Yeah. And again, what Coach Havens, you had some questions you wanted to ask because we sat there and it was one of those, again, do you admire from afar? Because we both understand what it takes to go year in and year out. Coach Havens.
Yeah, I think, Coach, number one, I'm impressed every year. You somehow create a culture so that you guys are competing every year. You look back at your run of, the end of the seasons, and your state championship runs are losing in PKs at the end.
Yeah.
And every year you bring a top-notch program. You're always looking to attack. That's my kind of soccer. I love,
right.
Attacking.
Absolutely.
No one likes to just sit back and let them have it. But, I'm looking at, how you're putting these kids together, like Hayden Quest, he's phenomenal.
Right.
In the times I've seen him this year, how are you putting together these kids, so that you're so competitive every year?
I mean, to be fair, I think it's a combination of a lot of things. As you guys know, being in a program, there is the piece of developing those players through the program, and so being able to having the numbers every year to have a freshman team and a JV team, and having coaches that are bought into the style of play we want to play, which is possessing the ball, getting the ball on the ground, and distributing, and moving forward together, and stuff like that. So obviously, bringing players up through the program is key. But some of the players we're talking about right now, Caleb Backerson's been at DV for 4 years. Didn't come out until his junior year. So he didn't come out until last year. So this is really only his second year of high school soccer. Hayden Quest was at Corona his freshman year, and then went and played in Germany for his sophomore year. Then came back and ended up on my doorstep. The beginning of last year as a junior. So little things like that. I won't say that I'm not lucky to get players like that. Genki Shinohara grew up in Japan. They moved here for dad's a pilot. They moved here his freshman year. They ended up at DV. So, and so he's been at DV all 4 years. So little things like that, where, I always think, gosh, we never get the big transfers or anything like that. But, obviously I've been blessed with good players. It's not, the success we've had isn't because, of anything I'm doing special as a coach. It really is. I've just got good players that are bought in and want to be a part of this program. I think that's the battle that a lot of high school coaches fight now is, the players that have that ability to do MLS next or whatever the case is. And so I've been fortunate enough to have these players bought into our program. And I know there's still players at our school that are doing, club and stuff like that. Be nice to have them out as well. But to be gifted some of these great players has helped, get us to that end goal every year, or at least, be in the mix in the end of every year.
Yeah, that's Coach. I agree. I agree right with you. When you almost get like, wait a second, is this really happening? Am I really getting this kid? Did I understand? Like, don't mess this one up.
Right.
Multiple times that's happened at Corona. And I think what we noticed, and I'll say this, it was not only the style in which you play, but it's the pride in which your players play it at. There was a moment when it was either Hayden or Caleb. The team never said anything, and there was a moment of the game that maybe could have. I think it was only 2 or 3-0 at the time only, but the game was at a lull, and one of the players barked out commands to the back line, and it was like, wow, that's different. But I think, again, you're fortunate to have that player that comes from a little bit higher level of a background or experience to know I can say this and have the confidence, number one. And number two, this is the moment the team needs it. And again, from a coach's perspective, you just look out at the field and you're like, hey, keep your mouth shut. To me, don't say
Right.
anymore, because that's more powerful than most things we can say during the game, is when you do have that senior leadership. A goalkeeper that wants to be a leader is so important. So
Absolutely.
yeah. In terms of, and again, in terms of how the season's going, you've got the open bracket, you've got the 6A bracket. Let's stick with let's stick with the open bracket.
Okay.
First of all, what are your thoughts on playing a 5A? We don't have any 4As in there. I don't think they're going to make it quite into that top part of that bracket to be dangerous enough. And again, I'm not insulting them as a program. I'm just being honest to say, our top 10, which goes from Desert Vista all the way down to South Point, which is a 5A, every one of the teams in the top 10 open right now, on a good day, can beat each other. That's a guarantee.
Absolutely.
And again, just from talking to Jeff Perry over at Arizona College Prep this week, he had mentioned, hey, I'd lost my best player, my goal scorer, 35 goals last year. I forget his name. I have to hit it later. But he had 25 goals already this season, and he's out, and he doesn't know how long. And they lose last night to
Campo.
To Drew over at Campo 1-0.
Yep.
Going into the playoffs, are there any teams that you're saying, watch out for them? Or is it something less than, hey, this is what Desert Vista needs to do to either stay where we're at or, again, build on what we've done?
Yeah, I think, I'm sure all coaches have taken a look at, trying to figure out what the open bracket looks like, and, and the back and forth. If you lose in the first 2 rounds, you go to 6A or whatever the case is. I think our goal from the beginning of the season is to end up at the top of the open bracket. And so, I think the message all along to our guys, whether, every week it's just, 1 week at a time, let's go 1-0 this week, let's go 2-0 this week, or whatever we're doing. But in the grand scheme of things, having them see how they're able to play, how, winning the game against Pinnacle and the other big games when they stepped up. There's been games where I feel like we probably haven't played to our abilities. And so, I just try to reinstill them, hey, if we show up, I believe there's no other team in the state that can beat us. If we show up and play how we're capable of playing, for the full 80 minutes, not, that's been part of our struggle this year. It's we wait 20 minutes to see how the other team plays, and then we decide, now we're gonna play our style of soccer. So if we show up and play that full 80 minutes, I'm going to take our chances against any 4A, 5A, or 6A schools. So that's just what I try to reinforce with them, is that we're capable of doing it. We just got to show up every night to make sure we get it done.
So speaking of that, Coach, so this year we have the new open bracket. So, the top 32 teams, play each other, and then those 16 winners stay, the 16 losers go back to their conference. Give us your thoughts on that. That's a new thing this year for soccer. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, it's funny. I talked with our girls coach the other day, and he's like, so, what are your thoughts? You could look at the bracket and go, hey, well, we might have a tough draw, but we could, and I like the idea. It does. I think they maybe for soccer could set it up a little differently, right? You could have your 6A, 5A, 4A championships, and then maybe have kind of like a champions league draw, if you will, something like that, where where that might give you more of a champions feel. But I think that I appreciate that they're doing something like this, because I think there always has been that, hey, that Campo made a great run, or we played Ironwood the last 2 years. Ironwood's been, I think they were a three-peat the last 3 years in 5A. So I think it gives us finally that opportunity to maybe put to rest some of that, some of the gray area of, hey, where are the soccer now? From a coaching standpoint, I it's going to be interesting to see how it shakes out. I think that I truly believe some of those 5A schools and 4A schools, I am positive they have some great players that are going to be successful. It's just the number of great players. It's going to be interesting to see, how that shakes out as far as, are these 6A schools just more dominant because they have a bigger number of players that can do what is needed to be done. So that's going to be, I think, the most interesting piece for me. But for me, again, we're not taking 18 lightly. We saw what happened to us last year. When we don't show up for a tournament game, it's easy to get a quick exit. So,
sure.
Yeah, Coach, I like what you said about it was one of your goals to be number one in the Open. And I think one of the advantages to that is that you're going to have some home games. And when you talk about some of these other teams, whether if it's the Washington, if I look down, if the Washington, the Shadow Ridge, right? Again,
yep.
You've got this Shadow Ridge team
we tied them.
Yeah, you don't really know much about them, but it's something about high school kids and how they perceive the matchup. And if it's an away game, is there something different about the fields? And we know, and I'm not knocking Arizona referees, but we also know that those top referees are not traveling to Tolleson for a Desert Vista versus Tolleson. They're not traveling to wherever it may be to make sure. That just doesn't happen. So you're going to get those regional sort of referees. And sometimes, again, I've had it where you just go like, oh man, that's kind of a tough call. And we as adults may say that's a tough call, but the kids, sometimes it really bends them a little bit.
Absolutely.
So from that standpoint, but again, I think your team has a really, really quality chance to do well deep into the tournament. And again, I'm hoping that, like I said, I'm on the call with Chris Harris and the NFHS Network and the AIA 365. I'm hoping, the guys I've had on the podcast so far get a chance to make it, so Chris and I have something to really use up in the booth. And so, Coach, I appreciate having you on the podcast. Sure. Again, you and I really haven't spoke because we talk about the rivalry between Corona and Desert Vista runs so deep. And you had mentioned your who's your assistant coach? What's his last name?
Rabaska. Yeah.
Rabaska.
Good old Rabaska. Yeah.
That name runs real deep into the minds of the Corona del Sol Aztecs. Let me tell you, and I will say this without hesitation, and I know Brent, you'll agree with me. When we first started at Corona back in 2005, that season, and Rabaska had Desert Vista. I think it was 2006 they won one of his.
Yep.
And both, Brent, you and I both know, like, wow, this guy Mike is different. And what we always said, and you're holding true to this, Coach, and again, hats off. When you play Desert Vista in December, you'll compete. But you don't want to play Desert Vista at the end of January, because whether if it was Rabaska and now you, different teams, man. And again, Mike Rabaska, and if he ever listens to this, and maybe his son, I stole so many details that Mike would do, say in games, and say, wow, I like the way he did that little piece. And again, I don't know if his son brings that almost that generational knowledge to the sideline, because it was different. And again, I will say, when he was the goalkeeper, and I believe you won your second state championship when he was the senior goalkeeper, correct? Or was he that 2000?
He was the 2018. He was on the first one, yeah.
And I will say, I think we had either played you earlier, I'd seen you earlier on in that season, and something changed. And I remember saying to Havens, that's the Rabaska effect. Something changed. And whether if he was in goal or if his dad was in the stands or had earpieces in, like, something was completely different. And it was like, that team is different. So again, Coach, congratulations so far. Whatever you're doing, it's working great at Desert Vista. I hope, again, those players, those parents, again, that are bringing in their kids to the Tempe Union District and going to Desert Vista, Great program, Coach. So again, congratulations.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Yeah. Hey, I'm just happy to be a part of it. And, I know, yeah, I jumped into, like you said, I jumped in and was thrown into the mix of a rivalry with Corona and all the good and bad that comes with it. But, I'm just happy to be along the ride and happy to have some good players that make me look like a decent coach. So,
Yeah. Again, hey, Coach Brent Havens, again, 17 years you and I spent together at Corona del Sol on the sidelines. I can say that if anybody's listening to this, they've had Brent Havens on the sideline of a JV game for almost 20 years now. This is 19 years at Corona del Sol. Again, Coach Havens, thanks for being on the podcast. I appreciate both you guys being on.
Thanks. Yeah, thanks for having me. It's funny, Coach Elliott's assistant on JV coach. Remind me his name.
Kevin Lamb.
Yeah,
Yep.
so he's almost been there as long as I have.
Yeah,
Vista. So
he's been there for a while. He started with Rabaska and then left for a little bit and then came back. So
yeah,
he's all over.
It's funny how the community is so small and it's great, and I love the fact that what you're doing here with talking about high school soccer. It's something that not everyone gets to experience, but it's a good thing you're doing.
Yeah, well, and again, I appreciate you guys. And Trent, one of the reasons why I started this podcast, and again, everybody that's listening, it was right now. No one's giving the credit not only to the kids that are dedicating the time, the effort. It's treacherous, the high school season in Arizona. Whether if it's 2 games a week, it's the 2 tournaments, and to understand, like, they're putting in so much work. And again, I also understand the work that club kids are making, but there's really no attention being paid to either one. And so being out of the high school game for a couple of years now, I recognize it's all the coaches putting in the work. It's the sacrifices that our administration sometimes are making to put these tournaments on, doing all this stuff. And maybe we have Jose Garcia or like a token email from somebody.
Media guy.
Yeah, the media guy. And so I'm hoping maybe through this podcast and working with Chris Harris with the AIA 365 and NFHS Network, that again we can bring some news to some of the top players around the state of Arizona. And again, after the high school season's over, it's going to be an extended podcast where it's not only high school soccer, beyond, where I'm bringing in some of the best players that have made an impact in Arizona soccer, the coaches, individuals. And so, again, you never know. Maybe we'll have you back on sooner than later, Coach.
Hey, absolutely. I would hop on anytime. I love what you're doing. Like I said, any exposure I feel is good exposure. And, and I think this is what we need I think we've got a great soccer community here in Arizona, and why not be able to shed some light on it so that the rest of the country can see that. So appreciate that.
I appreciate you two guys. Everybody, thanks for listening to the Soft Red podcast. If you've listened a couple of times, hit the subscribe button down at the bottom. Shout out to NIU Soccer, go Huskies. And everybody, have a great week. Enjoy the weekend. We'll see you next week. We'll have more news about the top 10 guys moving around. We'll see who's next to bring in number 1. Coach, if you're number 1, we might have to bring you on again. So thanks, everybody, and we'll see you again next time. Thank you.
I know you've been, I know you've been, I know you've been, I know you've been.